have to thank the government of Norway for such soaring music. I've been in every one of these sessions this morning, and it really is uplifting and energizing. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the IGF 2025 Global Youth Summit. This summit is a key component of the IGF 2025 Youth Track and part of the IGF 2025 High-Level Leaders Track. It's organized under the motto, Young Leaders for Multi-Stakeholder Governance of Digital Tech. And it's part of a broader series of the Youth Track's activities here at the IGF. The summit was developed through bottom-up consultations among designated representatives of the IGF's host country, this year Norway obviously, of the UN IGF Secretariat, from various youth IGFs, and other youth-driven global internet governance initiatives such as the Internet Society's Youth Ambassadors Program. The summit serves as a multi-stakeholder, intergenerational panel between the current and next generation of experts and leaders. I'm going to introduce my co-moderator, Jasmine Koh, who's from the Hong Kong Youth IGF. She will be leading the second part of the program, where it's actually an open discussion with people here in the room and of course online. And I'll introduce the panels just as soon as we get the program underway fully. Jasmine, a few words.
Thank you very much, Lane. So this is Jasmine Koh from Hong Kong, the Youth IGF National Coordinator. So adding a little bit more, the context of this Global Youth Summit, it's an effort by many of our youth colleagues, several months effort to co-create these sessions. So a little bit more, this is, we are creating this topic because we noticed that the digital platforms have become very integral to our daily life. Therefore, especially for young people, we want to ensure a safe and age-appropriate online experience as emergent as well as a global priority. And governments around the world are exploring developing regulatory frameworks aimed at protecting youth from harmful content while striving to balance safety, security, and protection of human rights and freedom. So recent legislative efforts increasingly focus on age verifications, requirements for social media and adult content platforms. These laws could mandate digital platform to implement robust age tracking system designed to prevent users under a certain age from accessing inappropriate or potentially harmful content. So after a very brief introduction of what will be covered in this session, I would like to give back the floor to Lynn to introduce our very special guest. So Lynn, please.
Thank you. It was just pointed out that I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Lynn Sainamore. I served as the IGF MAG Chair from 2016 through 2019, and I was previously, for 14 years, the President and CEO of the Internet Society. It is now my great pleasure, though, to welcome the Undersecretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, Mr. Lee Junha, for a welcome.
Thank you, Lynn, for inviting me. Well, dear young people from around the world, all the distinguished participants, dear friends, good afternoon. Welcome all of you to the IGF 2025, the Global Youth Summit. Just a month ago in Riyadh, I vividly recorded the IGF Youth Summit brought the global attention to the importance of the AI education. Today, with your bottom-up consultation, you'd actually rightly set the tune by focusing on another issue that defines your generation. That is on the regulations of the social media. Social media is integral to our lives. so much that the most of the youth have never known a world without it. Globally speaking, over 77% of the young people aged between 15 to 24 use the internet, and the vast majority, more than 80%, are active on social media. While these platforms offer the incredible opportunities to all of us, they were not necessarily built with your safety as a primary issue. The risks are real and pervasive. Over 1/3 of the young people in the 30 countries reported being superbullied. The youth data are harvested for the inappropriate targeted advertising, and the impact of the excessive screen time on mental and physical health is a growing concern, even a growing crisis. In response, the many governments are turning to solutions like age verification laws to protect the youth, particularly minors. But this actually raises a critical question. How do we protect the young people online without compromising their rights or limiting their freedom to participate fully in the digital world? I believe that the answer is within this room. Meaningful protection cannot be imposed from the top down. It must be co-created and co-managed with the young engagement. Placing youth at the center of the policymaking is not just a good practice, but it is a moral imperative. Meaningful youth engagement is necessary to ensure the digital environment are safe, grounded in respect for young people's rights, and supportive of their healthy development. The voices of the youth are essential to shaping policies that reflect the real experiences and needs. I'm very much encouraged to see senior government leaders, respectives from the major social media platforms, key regulators, and the other stakeholders are here today, and also joined with us plus 20 review, and particularly gathered in this IGF 2025. Your presence signals a vital willingness to listen and, more importantly, to act on what you have heard. The goal is very clear: to have the smart, rights-respecting regulations that keeps young people safe, secure, and protected, while empowering them to freely explore, express, and grow. This summit is a critical stop in this global journey. The Youth IGF track is building momentum from across the globe, from the European IGF in France and the African IGF in Tanzania, to the future gatherings at the Asia-Pacific IGF in Nepal, and the Latin American and the Caribbean IGF. This journey is about the building momentum and amplifying the youth leadership, the internet governance. This global engagement is especially timely as this year marks the 20th review of the World Summit on the Information Society, or WISS plus 20. This is a pivotal opportunity to redefine the digital governance for the next generation. I sincerely urge all of you to actively share your insights from this track to the WISS plus 20 process. You are not just a part of the discussion. You are the essential to designing a safer, more equitable digital future, reflecting the diversity of the practices, challenges, and aspirations. I sincerely wish you a very productive and fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce our panelists. And again, the first session of this is going to be some prepared remarks from them, specific to some questions which have been posed, and then we'll have an open session, the second part of the program. So first, I'd like to introduce Ms. Amina Ramalan, who's the Deputy Manager Institution for the Nigerian Communications Commission, and she is a youth representative. Second, Ms. Laura Rego from the Brazilian IGF. She's a student at the Federal University of Para and a research fellow with the National Council for Scientific and Technological Development, and also a youth representative. And we're going to hear from the two of them first, as we believe that that's really important in terms of setting the stage for the rest of our interventions. Next is Mr. Martin Arubi, Director for Public Policy for the Nordic countries Meta. And we will be joined very shortly by Mr. Brendan Dowling, who's the Ambassador for Cyber Affairs and Critical Technology, Development of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Government of Australia. Like so many of us here this week, he was double booked in this session, so he's making his remarks in another room, and then we'll come here immediately after, but he should be here any minute now. So with that, I'd like to invite Amina, your remarks.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So today I'll be talking about the role of social media in the lives of young people and platform policies if they align with the fundamental human rights and freedoms of young people. So I'll start by taking us back to the first remark that was done, which was that 77% of young people globally use the internet. And 1/3 of young people in 30 countries have reported to be either cyberbullied or some other form of cybercrime. So social media today is deeply interwoven in the lives of young people, from their daily activities to being a platform for creativity, being a platform for innovation, job creation, peer connection, and even civic engagement. We've seen cases of young people, championing governance, championing, advocacy within their regions, using social media and succeeding about it. Young people remain dynamic and they remain at the forefront of social media. Now, while we talk about these benefits that social media provides for young people while it's interwoven with their life, they still remain at exposure of certain risks. Some of these risks, we have cybersecurity risks, including child online risk. We have cyberbullying, we have cyber grooming, we have sextortion. We also have data privacy. Now, it may not seem like it, but young people, it may seem like, okay, maybe just someone is just playing a game, right? It might just be, an innocent game. But young people remain at risk of their data being harnessed, of their data being used without informed consent. We also have exposure to harmful content. Now, there's this, for instance, sometimes these young people might not even be the ones putting their data out there. It might be, a family member. It might be a parent. There is a term today online called share renting. Now, what that means is when a parent is out there, uploading details of maybe their child or word, so that exposes the child to, their data being out there without them even knowing. So it goes beyond not giving consent to the platforms, but also not giving consent to, the parent. Now, to the aspect of, does social media platform policies currently, do they align with fundamental human rights and freedom? So I'll say, while social media gives young people the avenue to, express themselves, the avenue to be dynamic, there are a lot of policies out there that need work because these policies are not evolving as fast as social media is evolving. For instance, now, social media platforms, they create some it might be like a UI effect, it might be like an algorithm effect. It creates a dopamine effect. For instance, you have unlimited scrolling. Now, in the case of unlimited scrolling, that is how the policy of the platform is, right? But then kids are at the receiving end because they become addicted, they scroll and scroll and scroll. You also have the case of, the way algorithm works, targeted ads at children. As much as there are policies out there that say, oh, if an account is registered to a child, maybe we will not, present this ad to the child, but we still see child accounts, having targeted ads. Also, another thing is that as young people are at the forefront of social media, they are also at risk of, not having, for instance, while the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child protects from harmful content, however, we see compliance across regions, compliance across the world is lacking in some places. Another thing is also that, for instance, social media remains, the platform for young people to also, have peer connection and community connection, but also that also puts them at the risk of coming in contact with malicious users. So I would like to just round up by saying, one of the things, while policies increasingly reference human rights principles, privacy, freedom of expression, protection, they often struggle in practice to balance these rights. We see issues of enforcement, we see issues of transparency. A lot of times, these policies are not transparent enough, or they are not consistent enough, and global consistency remains a problem, especially in a world today where we have, different countries, they have their different policies. So sometimes harmonizing those policies for the good of the child remains an issue. I'll just round up by saying that one of my recommendations is that social media platforms should integrate, safety by design. They should ensure that right-based design and regulation is their priority, integrating human rights impact assessment in product design, especially for youth, youth features. For instance, turning off addictive features like, unlimited scrolling, turning off addictive features, like likes. Regulators also should mandate age-appropriate design. There should also be stronger enforcement and global cooperation, and then digital literacy. Awareness cannot be overstated. There isn't anything like too much awareness. It might seem like every day we sit down and talk about the same thing, but it's a lot out there. The only thing is to scale up the awareness. Maybe 10 years ago, we were talking about, how do you come on social media? But today, we're talking about awareness on, how to identify deepfake, if that is even possible, how to know the difference between what is AI and what is real, right? And then to wrap up, I will say platforms should also consider if an account being open is a child account, there should be some sort of, survey, or I don't want to call it a course, but almost like a questionnaire to ensure that the person opening the account understands what they're opening the account for, understands the risk that they might be exposed to, and also tell them, okay, if you come across this risk, this is what you need to do, this is how you report it, and this is how you get it out of your feed. Thank you.
Thank you for your very pertinent comments, Amina. Next, we're going to hear from Ms. Laura Rigo. Specifically, we're interested in, from a youth's perspective, what do you think is a good way to make sure that the age checks that are being proposed on some social media really work and that they help keep young people safe from harmful content?
Good afternoon. I would like to greet all of the present and express my gratitude for the invitation of being here. I'm Laura Rigo. I stand here as a fellow member of the youth program from the CGI.br. I'm also a young woman from the Amazon region, from the city of Belém in Pará. I'm a law student, and I'm very worried with the online safety of the youth community. As a matter of fact, age verification is one of the various important steps in trying to create a health environment for children and teenagers in the digital space, although it's not enough by itself. Despite newer solutions in tracking users' age more accurately, like asking for the birth certificate or using facial biometry for the age check, and here I open a parenthesis to speak a little about a success case we had in Brazil that was coordinated by the National Authority of Data Protection in a request made by Institute Alana that we had a problem with TikTok. Why? Because you could access any of their content just by the link. And you could see anything, any video, without checking the age of the person who was accessed this content. And the Authority of Data Protection, or National Authority, they got to make TikTok ask for the account of the person who has accessed the content, so they could do the age verification, and it was very good for the children. Well, protecting the young from the harmful content goes by building stronger policies in rating content and also evolving a multi-stakeholder network of shared responsibility. Talking about Brazilian law, the Institute of Children and Teens assures us as a principle that the best interest of minors and the integral protection must be guaranteed by the whole society, with no space for exclusive responsibilization of the parents. This means the final user and his well-being should be, with no regards, protected by the companies that provide this service. From a youth perspective, especially from a country that 83% of the children between 9 and 17 already have their own account on social media, as it shows research realized by CETIC called TIC Kids, unilateral solutions had been shown to be flawed, urging for participation of the most affected, the children and the teens, which attracts the motto, "Nothing about us without us." That means to better comprehend the necessity and the pain of these groups, they should be called to the spaces of discussion, qualified and heard. In a way, the solutions could bring safety while engage our next generations of leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I'd now like to introduce Mr. Brendan Dowling. As I mentioned before, he was double booked for this session, but he has arrived just in time. He's the Ambassador for Cyber Affairs and Critical Technology in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade with the Government of Australia. Specifically, Brendan, we'd like you to talk to us about the Australian Parliament's recently endorsed age verification for social media use. It's been a few months now. How do you see the impact of the decision thus far, and what are any challenges or successes you might have noted?
Thank you, and apologies for being late. Late last year, the Australian government announced that we would be working towards restrictions on the use of social media by people under 16. The implementation of that initiative will happen in December 2025, so later this year. So the current development of the scheme is underway and going through a consultation process. What drove this measure is a sense that social media platforms were not created for children. They were not created generally with safety in mind. In fact, it's been years and years of pressure applied from governments and civil society to have social media companies actually take the safety of their users seriously. And a growing concern that platforms not designed for use by children are still being used by children, that current mechanisms for age assurance adopted by social media platforms are ineffective, often not developed particularly well, and the way that the platforms are designed to be exploitative of people's attention, to share material that is harmful, that for all the years of concerns that have been raised by the community, the response of social media companies has been lacklustre at best, disingenuous at worst. So the measure is driven by a sense of frustration at the level of inactivity from social media platforms and the feeling that the community in Australia expects government to do something to better protect its children. Of course, what you do is the really difficult question that we and many governments are grappling with. What we're looking for is a solution that is flexible, that is designed based on consultation with the community, including with people who are under 16 years old, that is not perfect. So let's not pretend there is any age verification solution that is going to be a perfect measure to be all things to all people. Part of the aim here is it is a normative shift to create in the culture and in the community an understanding that these services are not appropriate for kids who are under 16 years old. It is also to create some friction in the system, to say it should not be easy for you to circumvent whatever measures are in place on social media platforms to prevent use by children. It's part of a broader suite of measures. For years, many of you would know the Australian government's been very active in requiring platforms to adopt online safety mechanisms, requiring by law measures to limit the spread of harmful content. But the end result is we do think there needs to be some sort of mechanism. What we'll be doing is requiring platforms to take greater effort to restrict the use of their platforms by children. So this requirement is not a ban that applies to children or their parents, it applies to the companies. The wording of the legislation says that companies should, now I'm going to forget the exact wording, but essentially should take best efforts to adopt age verification measures. This means that there will be flexibility in the measures that they use. There won't be the prescription of one single tool that should be used. It means that there can be flexibility in the arrangements. We're currently going through a process of working with industry on what mechanisms can be used. There will be expectations about respecting rights and privacy through the use of these mechanisms. The government has already said that we will not be using a digital ID process. We'll be looking at alternative ways to verify age. So the whole aim here is to design a system that's flexible, that's consulted with industry, but that ultimately does give effect to the promise to say that children should not be using social media platforms because of the demonstrable harms that they have been facing. The actual implementation of the measure, as I said, will come later this year, so there are more details to be figured out before December 2025, but that's the pathway we're on at the moment.
Thank you. And now to wrap up, our panelist, with quite a big lift in front of him, is Mr. Martin Ruby. Again, he's the Director of Public Policy for Nordic Countries Meta. And specifically, we'd like to know how you believe all stakeholders, particularly social media companies, can work together to make sure that age checks on social media are effective everywhere, so that all young people across the world
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me. I hope the sound is okay here, otherwise flag it somehow. I already agree with a lot that have been said here. Not everything, but a lot that have been said, but we can discuss it over the next hour or so. And to your question on the responsibility, who has the responsibility? I think there is only the classic, pretty boring answer to that is that there are sort of a lot of stakeholders that needs to be on board in order to solve this one. It's a very, age verification online is super difficult. And I agree with the ambassador in what he said, that there is no perfect solution out there. And if there was, I think we had been forced to put it to use many years ago. So it is a very difficult one. But I'll spend my couple of minutes here on saying a little bit about our approach in Meta. We have a two-step approach, I would say. One of them is, of course, trying to keep kids safe online from the content they meet on our platforms, which means that we have developed over the years many, many different tools. We're learning every day, every week, every month. We're learning how are the trends, what are the youth doing, what new technologies are there that we have to sort of work with. So that means we have more than 50 tools now that are put in place to increase the safety for kids online. And then the biggest one maybe is the newest one, the teen accounts that we rolled out gradually over the world on Instagram first and then later on Facebook. Teen accounts means that everyone between the age of 13 and 18 are put into different buckets depending on their age. And that means that there are limits to what they can see. There are limits to who can contact them. There are a lot of different protections around them. And for the youngest of those teens, they cannot remove those without their parents doing it. The bigger ones, they have more freedom to change the settings. But anyway, so we're trying definitely hard. We have no interest in, someone said something about indicating a little bit that we have an interest in having bad, harmful content on our platforms. We definitely do not have any interest in that. And we want to protect the kids online, of course. Secondly, the next big thing here is then the age verification, because in order to be able to do the teens account, as I just mentioned, putting kids into the right, or the teenagers into the right buckets so they are protected well, we need to have a good, solid age verification. And that is just super, super difficult. It's easy if there's no privacy concerns, it would be easy, because then we could just ask the people to send us a lot of personal data, and then we can easily figure out how old they are. But I don't think there is a big interest in the world in sending Meta or other big platforms a lot of extensive personal data. I think there is a general opinion that we have enough. We need to find the right balance between the privacy and the safety here, and that makes it complicated. Then I think someone like us, big machinery, we have a pretty good system in place. Not perfect, of course, we can discuss that. But someone like us and Google and some of the other big ones have big machineries, we have big muscles, we have good age verification systems in place. But again, across the internet, across all services, also ours, there is a need for a better one. The model we actually suggest is that two things. We actually want to see regulation on this. It's very rare that you hear something like that, maybe from a player like us, but we actually want to see regulation on age verification coming our way. We're pushing it very actively in the EU, where I'm working. And secondly, we are saying that the model we suggest then, that to actually make it work efficiently, would be to do it on the device level. That means that in the App Store. So that means on this one. So instead of going app by app by app by app, our number shows that teenagers are using more than 40 different apps. Looking at my own two girls at home, I think that's right. I think we think it's a good idea to do it on this one. So because there are only two apps, basically there are only two sort of operating systems in the world, Android and iOS. Put it there, so that means in practical terms, when I set up this phone with my daughter in Denmark, where I live, the Save the Children says that children are between 8 and 9 years old when they get their first smartphone. 8 and 9 years old. That's probably true. And that means that when I then set it up, and an 8-year-old doesn't go down and buy their own smartphone, they get it from their parent. It could be a used one or it could be a new one. But then a parent are sitting there next to the kid setting up the phone, and they put in the age. And our proposal is just that has to be binding by law, that when that age is in, that kid can only download stuff that fits that age, unless the parent makes a different an exception to it. When they are like 14, you can say, okay, it's okay. But that means my daughter, when she was like 12, she could not download Instagram or Snapchat or whatever. So the technology is there. We find it to be a golden moment to do it like that. We can discuss it more in a minute. I don't want to spend more time. But it's a very easy way and to do it, we feel that it could cut across all countries in Europe, where I work right now, where we discuss it most actively, I think, also in the US, but cut across a lot of countries, cut across all apps in an efficient way. I'll stop there.
Thank you. There's so many things I personally would like to follow up on with all the panelists, but Jasmine and I are purposely trying to keep our moderation very light. This next section is the time for both you here in the room and online participants to ask your questions, either of the panelists, or start a discussion amongst yourself if you want to follow on from something some other individual has said. There are mics at two ends of the room and someone who's kindly volunteered to be a roving mic. So I'll turn the floor over to Jasmine now.
Thank you very much, Lynn. So please be reminded, each speaker, you could have up to 2 minutes for your interventions. You can comment, you can also ask questions to the panelists or etc. So if you're ready, please feel free to use the mics on two sides of the room. And then we will also be tracking the Zoom room for if any online participants would like to pose a question as well. So perhaps we could start from that gentleman first on the left.
Thank you. My name is Larry Maggot. I'm the CEO of Connect Safely. We're a US-based NGO. And full disclosure, we do have support with Meta, Amazon, Google, OpenAI, and many of the companies that are involved in this. I guess this question is to anybody, but specifically the gentleman from Australia. There is no doubt that social media, like bicycles and basketballs and just about anything in the world, can harm people. There are dangers. But there's also no doubt, based on research, that there have been many benefits to young people from social media. In fact, there are children alive today that might not have been alive had it not been for a social support system that they were able to get on social media when they reached out, when they were in some kind of crisis. There are children and adults, but children, LGBTQ children, for example, in communities where they're ostracized, and they've been able to literally get a lifeline through social media. And there are many examples where mental health has actually improved as a result of social media. So while I agree with you that just like bicycle riding, it's very important to have education, wear helmets, obey all the rules of traffic, but we don't ban people under 16 from riding bicycles, even though more people have died in bicycle accidents than have died from social media. So I'm just curious, do you have any concerns about the harm you may be doing, as well as the benefit? I'm not acknowledging that there is no benefit, but the harm you may be doing by keeping some young people from social media that could actually literally save or at least improve their lives and their mental health.
So I think all public policy is about balancing risks and benefits. I do think that comparing social media to bicycles is a fair stretch. I think bicycles are not designed to exploit the attention and to target marketing towards children. I'm sure there are situations where social media platforms have provided those types of benefits that you talked about. However, I think across the board, the research and evidence pointing to the exploitative and predatory practices of social media platforms that do target children, the harms that have been documented over years and years in broad-reaching ways of attention spans, of cyberbullying, of access to harmful content. When we look at the balance of those measures, my view is that those platforms are not designed for children. They're not designed to benefit the health and well-being of children. And in fact, the harms are very well documented now. So on balance, not saying I disagree with your point, I think it's a really valid point, and this is something that we do see coming up in the consultation process that we're going through. We do hear the range of perspectives, but on balance, the harms that we see in a very widespread way through our community warrant this type of action from government public policymakers.
Okay, so if maybe we can have the next, thank you very much. We can have the next speaker on taking the mic, please.
Okay. Yeah, hi everyone. This is Bibik Silwal from Nepal. So my perspective would be from the developing nations. So the youth and children from developing nations aren't aware of their rights whether it is the exploitation in the platform, are they being abused or not. In developed countries, somehow in courses in a school, they are taught, okay, these are the do's and don'ts in the platform, these are need to be done. But in the case of developing nations, there are no any curriculums where, these things are the things you can do in the platforms. These are the good things, these are the bad things. So my question is to Martin from Meta. So how is this balance for the youths, especially the underage, to get access to the platform? Is the simple date of birth enough, or there should be some AI platforms like face recognition or somehow that this can be balanced? And also, shall the age limitation be multilingual? Because when you go back to the country, so are they able to read what are the terms and conditions, what they are going through in their own language? The platforms or whatever the content that are posted is in their language, but are the terms and conditions and all those other things we are going to are multilingual? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Just come back if I don't reply to it all, but the sound is not perfect. I think on your question on the age verification, how to do it, use AI, local language, whatever. I think again, our idea is to do it on the device level. Today we use AI actually in the sense that if young users, for instance, if a 13-year-old suddenly changes their age and says they're 23 instead, we actually ask them to send a picture and then send it to our third-party Yoti that we use as and we also use other kinds of technologies to try to see if we can detect the age properly. But going forward, our main proposal is that we think that we should do it when you set up the phone. When you set up the phone, because that is the entry point in by far the most instances. So when you set up the phone, that is when we think that you put in the age, and when you've done that, it should be binding from there on. And then the parent is in control of what you download, and then they can make exceptions, etc. For the bigger, for the older teens, not the youngest ones. And I think, so I think that's probably our way. What we find to be the easiest way forward. I don't know if that answered your question. Otherwise, just yeah, sorry.
I'll just first, if you put on the headphones, the sound is clearer. But just to add, I think what the speaker was saying, sorry, I didn't get your name, especially for the developing countries, right? I come from a developing country. The percentage of 8 to 9-year-olds owning a smartphone is very, very low. So a lot of times you find that children maybe use a phone that is to a sibling or a parent to say, okay, maybe I use your phone, I download maybe an app, I download social media. Sometimes the owner of the phone, the parent might not even know that the kid has downloaded that app on their phone and is using social media on it. So yes, safety by design is good. Yes, starting from the OEMs and making sure that once a phone is set up for a child, it cannot download certain apps. But beyond that, especially for developing countries where you don't usually have young children owning their own smart device, I think the responsibility still falls back to these apps that they are downloading. So in the event that a child downloads these apps either through a phone that was set up for an adult or that it belongs to their parents, what are the, the policies, what are the steps that, are put in place to ensure that when that happens, this child, because at that point, the child is not using any form of facial verification on the app. The phone belongs to an adult, automatically it downloads, it creates a profile. So I just wanted to add to what, I think that maybe makes your question clearer, right? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Martin and Amina. So we received one question from a Zoom, but we will go to the on-site first, and then we will go back to the Zoom. So please.
Hi, my name is Giovanna. I'm from Brazil. I'm actually from the same program that Laura participates at, the Brazilian Youth Program held by CGIBR. And I am trying to look at the discussion as asking like age verification for what purpose? And I think here we are talking about age verification for the purpose of tailoring an experience for kids and teens. So I would like to ask all of you, actually it's a general question, and if you could all comment, I'd be really happy. How do you think this experience should change in terms of advertisement? Because I think we can all fairly agree that the way ads work online are part of the reason why social media can become so toxic for kids and teens. So how should this experience be different when it comes to online ads and advertisement? Thank you.
Look, I'll start with one comment. The measure that Australia is looking to put in place is not about shaping the user experience. It's about saying children under 16 should not have a social media account. So we know that age verification can be used for that exact purpose. And in fact, I think a lot of technology companies have got quite sophisticated in the way that they can target ads and shape the user experience, which brings its own set of issues and risks. But for us, this measure is about restricting access to having a social media account, not changing the user experience.
Can I just comment on the ambassadors' the point here? I think the problem is also, as one of the previous speakers said, that I think the problem is that the under 16s is, I think there's a big difference between someone with the age of 8 and 15. I have 2 daughters, age 13 and 16, and I would say that's a big difference. And I would say that removing the opportunity for a 15-year-old to communicate via social media with her friends and family and whoever, and follow interests there, exploring stuff. I think that's a big thing to do, I must say. I think my daughter would definitely agree if she was sitting here. I think it's a big thing to do. And I think sometimes, I'm glad that we have a lot of youth in this room, because sometimes I feel the young people's voice are getting lost in these debates. I think it's always a bit fearful what is being debated. And I can just say when I sometimes talk to my 15-year-old, now she's 16-year-old daughter about these things, I think her generation, I think, is just in a different place. I think they are just getting, I think and I totally appreciate what you're saying, that social media is not built for small kids. That's true. And an 8-year-old shouldn't be running around on social media. But I think a 15-year-old saying that they are not allowed at all on social media, I think it's a big thing. And yeah, I just want to make that point, because I owe that to my daughter, I would say.
Okay, thanks Ambassador and Martin. So now we move back to online. Adia, you have a question. You can unmute yourself and speak.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, so I'm Aditya Majumdar with the Dynamic Teen Coalition, and a lot of my work has focused on tracking international social media bans and restrictions targeting teens. I found that these measures, while often have been justified as protecting youth, have also been shown to frequently disconnect us from critical support networks and educational resources, especially for marginalized teens. And I think a gentleman previously brought this up as well. So my question is, how can the Australian government ensure youth safety without turning to blanket bans that silence our voices? And when will we finally have a meaningful seat at the table in shaping these digital policies that affect our lives daily? Thank you.
I think access to educational resources is not what this measure is targeted about. Access to the online environment is not what this measure is targeted about. It is very specifically targeted to social media accounts created by children under the age of 16. So this does not affect access to YouTube, for instance, as a way to access educational videos. the voice of youth is important. That is part of the consultation process. I would say that as part of a lot of that consultation, not only parents are raising concerns about the impact of social media on well-being, on mental health, on stress levels, on sleep, on attention spans. These are issues being raised by kids as well. There are kids in Australian schools who are initiating limited access to phones during the education day. So I don't think this should be seen as an adults versus kids type of measure. This is about a general community sense that the documented harms to all those areas of brain development at that age warrant public policymakers stepping in and taking steps to address those. So the online environment's become an important part of all of our lives. It is an important part of healthcare. It is an important part of education. But social media, I think, on balance, has far more demonstrable harms to the well-being of children that has taken this step. That's not at the exclusion of people's voices. It's not at the exclusion of the participation of youth. It's not about silencing youth. It is about doing something drastic, and it's a big step. I agree with my colleague from Meta. It's a big step, but it's a step that the Australian government has felt compelled to take because we don't believe that the protections that have been put in place by social media companies for children's well-being have been adequate or sufficient. So this is the role of government to step in and protect the community interest.
So anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Ambassador. So since we also have questions from the Zoom, so we'll go for 2 in-person intervention, and then we move back to online. So please.
Thank you. My name is Mariam. And my commentary is that social media is not for children, but it's also bad for young adults, even if they are 16 or 18 or even 20, because their frontal lobe hasn't been developed yet, and so they don't fully know how to use social media for good purposes. And a good step to that would be introducing some kind of education course to social media that would be obligatory, so that every person that has a social media account on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok, that they would receive every couple of months some kind of education course on how to use social media for good purposes, and to teach the parents also to give them more information about what harm social media could give to their children. And what are your thoughts on that?
I can go if you want. I'm totally all in favor of increased digital skills and increased digital literacy. I think it should be part of schooling because social media and the internet as such is not going away. It's there. You can try to then squeeze out a few apps, but then the young people will move to other apps. They will move to other places on the internet. They will probably move to darker places, I would also say. So I think you have to be very careful when we go in and do these things. But I totally agree that there's no way around that we have to learn our kids better to what they see, what they meet, how to behave on the internet and on social media, of course. And adding on that one, I think, and that's when we talk about who has the responsibility. We have a big responsibility. Regulators have a responsibility, as I suggested a couple of times, on what I think they should do. And then I think the parents, me as a parent, I think I also have some responsibility in terms of, there's no tech company in the world that can fix this alone. There's no regulator that can fix this on their own. If I don't care what my daughters are doing, it's going to be very difficult to fix it from a regulator or for a tech platform. So, everyone has to be responsible about this thing to make it work. But digital skills, I think, literacy, is absolutely the basis. I agree totally on that.
Thanks, Martin. Anyone want to add on?
I would just add one point. We're now seeing connectivity reach some of the most remote populations in the world. We do extensive work in the Pacific, ensuring last mile connectivity into remote villages. A real challenge that we're seeing in communities in places like the Pacific is that connectivity, access to mobile devices, access to social media platforms is reaching communities before digital literacy gets there. I agree, this is a collective challenge. This is something we need to work on to build up the digital literacy understanding of what the appropriate use of social media platforms are. We have kids accessing devices and social media in communities where parents have had no actual lived experience. So it becomes very difficult for them to work with their children on understanding the risks and potential harms of the social media environment. So there's a real challenge with connectivity should come online safety and digital literacy. I think collectively, from a government and an industry and a civil society perspective, we haven't done a good enough job of that, and we're trying to make up for that lost ground, but actually these things should go hand in hand from the outset.
Thank you, Ambassador. So one more in-person intervention, please.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Hi, my name is Cosima. I work at UCL in London's Digital Speech Lab, and I was previously with the UK Safer Internet Centre for 5 years. I have a couple questions, a little bit more on the digital literacy angle, but also the sort of flexibility of a blanket ban. I know both from Meta and also the Australian government, you've sort of taken different stances on how flexible we should be in terms of allowing young people to use social media. On sort of wanting sort of less flexibility, I'm wondering if we want flexibility in the legislation and not just one way of enforcing these bans, how do we ensure the legislation is strong enough? And then if we don't want a ban, which I'm sure is more the meta perspective to an extent, then what more specifically can we do on digital literacy, given the platforms are the ones that facilitate the harms by just being the platform that it happens on? Not that it's necessarily their fault, but it's where it happens. So looking for a bit more detail there, if that's okay.
I think it's a really tricky question. This is when you design policy, figuring out how much flexibility is the right amount of flexibility is always a balance, is always a debate, is always an argument, I think, involving all members of the policy community. So I don't think we will get things exactly right. The test, which I couldn't remember earlier, that we often use in Australian law is take reasonable steps. Now, what does reasonable mean in these sort of situations? Often it comes to a community test. Do we think this is reasonable? It can then be challenged in courts. So this push and pull over what is a right level of flexibility, are industry players abusing that flexibility? This is something that we see play out in a range of areas of public policy. I think for us, this, as we've covered in the panel, this is a new area of policy making for many governments around the world. It is a new area of technology development. For me, that means more flexibility is the right approach at this moment. There are a range of options that companies already look to adopt that are being developed. Let's let those options proliferate. Let's see what works best. And oftentimes, we then get coalescence around more effective tools. So I think starting flexibly is better than starting prescriptive and trying to pull that back. So as I said, companies will have the expectation they will take reasonable steps. They then have the flexibility to figure out what the right approaches are. We'll embed in the rules the protection of privacy and digital rights, noting that that is a sliding scale, which not everyone will be satisfied with the results of where it lands. But we lean more flexible in this early stage.
Thank you, Ambassador. So I'm going to read out one question from online. From Umut Pajaro, the question is, how do you think child and teens can be included in the design of policy for these social media platforms?
Okay, you can go. So I'll just start by saying, in 2020, when the pandemic hit, the ITU developed the child and land protection guidelines for the industry, the policy, children, parents, teachers, and whatnot. And one of the recommendations was for for member states to adopt and adapt and localize and make it, make it relatable for the children within their region. So one of the things that we did in Nigeria was, it was the pandemic. Everybody was at home. People were not easily reachable, right? But we found a way to virtually reach children, find out what their ideas are, what they think of the policy as it is, what they would like to see is different, and what else they think should be included that is not currently included as children. So I will say there isn't just one straight way to, include children in policy making. You just have to do it. Nations, organizations, platforms, international corporations need to just put children at the forefront, because young people are not just like the leaders of tomorrow, they're the leaders of today. Governance is becoming younger, right? They are not, today they are on social media, they're on internet. No matter how we try to discourage, how we try to, paint this bad picture, but they do see the benefits, so they remain online. So there isn't a way, just include them, make sure their voices are heard, because they are actually the majority users of these platforms, and these policies are made to protect them. These policies are made to make sure that their use of the social media, their use of the internet is, straightforward, and they are not being exposed to any harm. So just include them and make sure their voices are not lost in conversations. Thanks.
I agree with you, and I think that it's about occupied spaces and about digital literacy too. So we have to have this concern of inclusion now, so we can hear these voices, and when we hear them, we can make these policies better by knowing what's really the problem. Because it's very easy for us to look and think, I know what the problem is. But we don't have the mentality of a teen who is in various scenarios being the first ones to experiment this technology, and the technologies are experimenting on the children. We can have this. We must hear them.
Thank you, Amina and Laura. So coming back to the cute, please.
Hello? A bit closer? Okay, fine. Hi, my name's Amy. I've been a digital ambassador for online safety for children for about 6 years with the UK for Internet Centre as well. And I have a follow-up question for Laura and Amina, as well as a question for Brendan as well. So my follow-up question is, who do you think holds the most responsibility when it comes to making sure children are at the forefront of these discussions about social media and their uses of it? And for Brendan, I know you said there is a lot of work to go in the legislation that you're trying to roll out, but have you had any thought process towards how you'll ensure that social media companies actually use the most effective verification method, rather than a verification method that works but isn't necessarily the most effective for them? Thank you.
Well, I think it's a multi-stakeholder effort. We can name one sector who should include these children. Brazil, for example, in 2025, it released a guide for safe use of internet for children. And this guide, it has a multi-stakeholder view that points, for example, what enterprise should do, what the parents should do, what the children should do, what the government should do, and it's not a closed answer.
but we have some guidelines, some principles, and I think discuss it is the first step.
Do you want to follow up and then?
Oh, no, I just to re-echo what she said, it's a multi-stakeholder approach, because where the responsibility of one stakeholder stops, the responsibility of the next stakeholder begins. Where when I drop off my child at school, my responsibility to ensure they're safe online stops there. Now the teachers pick up, right? When the child maybe goes out on an excursion somewhere, for instance, the responsibility of the school stops, and maybe then it's now the responsibility of, say, it's a government event, the government. So it's a multi-stakeholder effort. There isn't one stakeholder that is more responsible for child online safety than the next.
I think on using the most effective tool, it's a good question. A couple of ways we'll be monitoring that. One is we have a commission called the E-Safety Commission, which is responsible for regulating online safety issues. Part of these measures will be transparency around the use of tools, reporting from companies about how they're using the tools, what effectiveness there is. That is something that our regulator, the E-Safety Commission, will be taking responsibility for. If we see that the most effective tools are not being used, then there will be the ability to monitor it. There will be the ability to say, well, these are not reasonable steps. Now, easier said than done, right? Monitoring the effectiveness of these types of tools is not necessarily going to be easy, but will rely on the transparency of platforms to actually work with government on making this work. This is where I think community expectations are really important. As the social norm on the use of social media platforms by kids shifts, there'll also be community expectations about how social media platforms go about doing this. And as always, the community holds platforms accountable for what they commit to doing, as well as the government regulator. So I think between those measures, we'll have some pretty good visibility of what happens, how effective it is. A lot of eyes are on these measures. Australia is not the only country, but one of the early countries to look at adopting this. I think we'll have a lot of attention to the tools that get used.
Thank you, Ambassador, and Amina, and also Laura. So back to the queue here, please.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Wouter, I'm from the Netherlands, and I want to share a different point of view about age verification, because I think it's really the wrong way forward. I would say it's part of victim blaming, because it's not only about the content that's damaging youth, but it's also the platform itself. Many of the things Amina described are not part of the content, but actually the platform that's content is hosted on it. I think companies like Meta created the perfect cigarette, and now we're trying to take them away from our children. So I would request the ambassador of Australia, please regulate the platforms, not the users. Do not take this cigarette away from our children, but take the nicotine out of this platform. And yeah, and I think I would like to add to that there are alternatives to these addictive platforms. Platforms are based on public values and not on profits. So let us not confuse innovation with progress and choose for platforms that actually contribute to human progress and keep youth and parents safe.
I think that's a really important point. I think we will look back on this era and the last 15, 20 years as an era that we regret in how these technologies evolve, being used. Practices that were acceptable 10 years ago by social media platforms will not age well when we look back in history. You use the cigarette example. I think it's a really interesting analogy. The knowledge of the harms and the failure of companies to actually do something to protect the well-being of users, I think light has been shone on that, but I think will continue to be a feature of how we understand the use of this technology. I would say in our legislation, the obligation is on companies. It's not about banning kids. It's about companies taking reasonable steps to restrict access. But I think your point is an interesting one that will continue to play out as we better understand what some of the harms of the way that social media is used are more apparent, we might look back and say, look, actually there's further measures that need to be adopted here.
I think I probably need to respond a little bit on that one. Just saying that I actually agree with a lot of what the ambassador is saying on. I think we will learn a lot from these years in terms of the technology, and I think we are maturing, and there might also be some of the technologies that were used 10 years ago that you just said now that will not be looking good 5 years from now, or now even. That's probably true. So, I mean, we are definitely, I mean, we have billions of people using our platforms totally voluntarily every day because people like to use them. And I like to use them. And I mean, I think it's, I think there is something, now we're very gloomy in here today. We're very looking at the bad things, which is totally fair. But there is actually like 99.99 whatever of the content that is on the platforms, and probably also on our competitors' platforms, are totally normal, boring, funny, interesting, learning, whatever content. And I think we just, and then there is the bad stuff that we need to find and we need to get rid of. And are we always good enough at finding it fast enough? No, probably not. We can discuss that. I mean, we try. But that's a different discussion maybe. So just saying that I think maybe we're getting a bit gloomy on what the internet and what social media actually contributes. And just one final point on that is that if you look at young people, I think young people actually, they go there because they, and I think that a lot of research is backing up what I'm saying here, is that they actually go there because they find a lot of connections there. They actually engage with their friends and families there. They are increasing their well-being when they are there. That's also research backed up because they go in there and it's an extension of their social life. And then there is, of course, problematic stuff, and we need to get rid of that. There's also extensive use that is too much, and we also need to get rid of that. But I think we should just be a bit sort of have some proportions in the debate. That's just what I'm saying.
Thank you both. So in interest of time, can we kindly ask to receive 2 questions at once? So after the lady, the gentleman can go directly. So we got 2 questions at once.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. I am both young and old enough to remember social media like MySpace and Facebook and Instagram with algorithms or personal ads. And so we're having conversations here about access and social media being harmful to children, but what I feel like we haven't addressed is the economic models that have developed in the mid-2000s. That is an economic model of attention, which is harmful for children. Social media in itself can have positive benefits, but what I want to know is what is being done on the regulation point of view, and also the platform point of view to address the economy of attention. Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Thank you very much. My name is Lou Vokre. I am the chairperson of the South African Youth Internet Governance Forum. I think the gentleman before me had touched on this point. We recently hosted a South African Youth Internet Governance Forum before the National Internet Governance Forum in South Africa in April. And this discussion was, quite a touching topic, especially amongst many of the young people that attended there. So it basically touched on, as we build these frameworks, right, for age verification and online safety, are we really asking the right question? Shouldn't we be focusing less on verifying the age of the users and more about verifying the responsibility and the accountability of platforms profiting from young people's data and attention? So how do we shift the conversation from regulating the youth to regulating the digital power structures around them? Because, as the gentleman mentioned, why are we, talking about the cigarette, yet the cigarette is being supplied by the digital owner? So I think instead of over-regulating the internet and over-regulating social media, let's look at the wholesalers of these platforms and regulate them instead of focusing on the users. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So for the panel, you may want to keep your response to within a minute, if possible.
Okay.
I'll be really short. I love both those questions. I think the social media change to maximise the phrase you use, which I think is a really excellent phrase, the economic model of attention. Anyone who's been on X recently, I think, would be hard-pressed to say that the way it sucks your attention in has any social health benefit whatsoever. It's become about maximising engagement. That's how platforms have monetised this. I think that's a really serious question. This is a hard area of public policy making. I think it's one that we're getting more attuned to. It's one that we're paying more attention to. There's greater transparency. I don't think there's super easy answers to those questions, but part of the reason I work in these fields is because it's an area of public policy where we're grappling with some of the hardest questions. So I really appreciate some really interesting points being made there.
Okay. I think I will, I'll take this one. I think I will actually say to the last question that I actually recommend against that approach in the sense that, and not because I know I'm as biased as it gets, but still, my argument here will be that I think the age verification, it might be nerdy, but it is really, really core. If we want to have kids to be safe online, it's about time that we get practical around age verification. And now I live in Europe. Europe has been discussing EU regulation for 10, 15 years now and been adding a lot of it. But age verification is actually where there is still a gap, and we need to get that fixed, otherwise we get nowhere. And then we can also have that other debate about the bigger picture, but I just think it's really important to focus on that. And then on the first question, just saying on the overall business model and algorithms, I mean, actually you can go in and sort of kill the algorithm on our platforms. You can just say, I want my feed to be chronological. Someone mentioned that before. You can still do that. You can just go in there and choose chronological feed. I won't recommend it as a user experience, but you can feel free to do it. And then there is no algorithm controlling your feed. And on the business model as such, the advertising business model, I mean, with some level of personalization, is pretty much the business model of the whole internet. I mean, of news publishers, pretty much the business model of the whole internet. So it's just that it's a big bear you're shooting when you are discussing that. Just bring that on the table.
Thank you. So in interest of time, I will just have one online question, and for 3 of you guys, please try to make it within 30 seconds. We will take 4 questions at the same time, and after the questions, panelists, please prepare to respond and give your final remark by giving our audience the one concrete action that could take away. So I will start with the online question very quickly from Rick Lance. The question is, if a product is designed in a way that can cause harm, shouldn't the company that designed that product be held accountable by those who are harmed in a court of law? First question. So the remaining, please, 30 seconds each.
Hi, my name is Claire. I'm a high school student from Hong Kong, and I agree that everyone should take responsibility. But I guess my question is that since I guess the age of children using social media is decreasing as the years go by and generations go by. I guess to me, it is because, a reason is because, there are, at least, in Hong Kong, there are, kids use social media because they don't really have an alternative, and it is a way for kids they're on their iPad because they don't really have an alternative, and it's a way that parents are keeping them attentive. For example, during dinner, I see many people scrolling on social media, children. I guess my question is, what are some ways that parents can get involved in, I guess, averting kids' attention from social media to some other alternatives to get them off social media? But I agree that social media is, because I go to boarding school, I have been going to
sorry to cut you. It's almost 30 seconds, so please. The next one, please.
Hello, my name is Heilan. I'm a politics and technology student from Germany. In recent years, we have seen a global shift towards more extreme political positions, and social media is often used to amplify or radicalize these stances because many politicians actively use them to gain support from younger audience. My question is, how do you see the role of technology, like tech companies and governments, in addressing this issue? Should there be more strong interventions or regulation to prevent the misuse of this platform for political radicalization? If so, what kind of interventions should be appropriate? And I know that there are fact-checking mechanisms that already exist to some extent, especially on Facebook, for previous Facebook. And do you think could they be used more strategically to counter political radicalization, especially against the spread of dis and misinformation? Thank you so much.
Next one, please. Last one.
Hi, my name is Kenneth from London, and thank you, Martin, for highlighting youth voices is getting lost in this debate. I want to reply on this as the advisor of Asia Pacific Policy Observatory, a digital native think tank in the initiative building capacity in policy analysis and engagement. So most recently, we have been looking at how AI is impacting various digital issues, including online safety, and our latest findings, which we will launch at the IGF this week, mentioned that a lot of the things that you all have been talking about, the need of safety by design principles that incorporate age-appropriate protections throughout the service ecosystem and business model, but also how crucial transparency is. And this is what I wanted to zoom in on. So digital natives wanted to see not just online platform publishing the principle, policy in place, or action taken to protect minors, which is crucial, but digital native also wanted to have a seat at the table in shaping not just government policy, but also these aspects of corporate governance and policies. So in your remarks, you have mentioned and emphasized the difficulty and absence of a perfect solution to verify age and protect children on platforms. I would encourage the youth and multi-stakeholder participation in shaping these corporate policies, which would be very fundamental. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So for the panelists again, while you're addressing the question, please also make your final remark by sharing a concrete action to take away as well. So please, panelists.
Okay, I'll just respond to the first question about alternatives to keep children engaged rather than social media. So just to, not because these are all, the list is exhaustive, right? So some of the things that parents can look at, you have educational applications, you have educational games. I mean, there's so much out there online that children will rather be, on than be on social media that can help with their learning, help with their cognitive thinking, help with their ability to do better in school, help with their ability to, learn, to be creative, to express themselves. You have creative platforms that help children find out what they're good at, platforms that help children, you have coding, storytelling, even music, even art, right? There are a lot of platforms out there. It fosters problem solving, creativity, and digital literacy. Also, you have a lot of podcasts, age-appropriate podcasts, of course, for children, audiobooks also, they can listen to that rather than, and also, I mean, something that we used to do before, which was a lot of outdoor activities now because of, the internet and social media, everybody is indoors. The pandemic didn't help. We got used to being more indoors again. But then being outside, it helps. Physical, not just even to be offline because of the risks, but it helps with physical health. And also it helps with, it reduces sedentary time because a lot of times today, not just even children, we're at work, children are in school, they're just sitting down, that's also not good. So just to round up my one concrete action, I will say, yes, we talk about safety by design, but I will still, key into awareness, right? The ambassador spoke about we are in a situation whereby parents did not have access to the internet. A lot of parents did not have access to the internet and social media as long as their kids of today. So we need to scale up that awareness. It's not just about, the platforms doing the right thing. We need them to do that, but also scale up awareness to the children, to the parents, to the teachers, to policymakers, and ensure that, maybe 5 years ago, the awareness might be about something. Today, it can be about AI. It can be about how to be safe online. And also not just in, informal platforms. We need to also infuse these awareness sessions into the school curriculum so that while we're teaching children how to code and how to, what is a computer, what does a monitor look like, for instance, we're also teaching them, okay, if you're on social media, this is it. If you're on social media, this is how you stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Amina. Ambassador, can I?
Sure, I'll try and hit all four really quickly. Accountability in a court of law for harms caused by content on social media platforms is a really tricky question. There is a legal shield under US law which puts a liability with the person who posted the content, not with the social media platform. I think that's shaped the way that platforms have developed, but that's the way the law is there. I think it's for other jurisdictions to figure out what the right legal approach is and whether there is liability if a platform fails to take action against content that is proved to be harmful. Can they be held liable for those harms? That's something I think that our courts of law will test. Alternatives for kids. Parents are lazy, right? I do this. I've got young kids. Our kids get upset, our kids are bored, they get hungry, we're like, have the screen. We have become bad at parenting because that's an easy way out. My worry is that when you give the screen to the child, they don't process their feelings when they're feeling angry or upset. Boredom is crucial to creativity. If we are taking away kids' ability to be bored, we're destroying their creativity. So I think that's on parents. I think if we see that as a solution because their kids are annoying us, and look, they can be very annoying, there's no doubt about that, then that's on us and we're failing as parents. So there's lots of alternatives. It's okay, there's sometimes when putting them in front of the screen is the only option or the right thing to do, but we as parents, we need to take responsibility for that. Abuse of platforms by politicians with extremist or radicalised messages. I think Meta, we should give credit here. I think there were years in which the algorithms were manipulated by politicians and extremists using Meta's platforms, and Meta took that seriously and has looked to address that. I hope we're not seeing backsliding from Meta and other platforms now, because if this remains a real risk, that the spread of extreme content, content that creates social divisions or reinforces social divisions, will always be a major risk in social media platforms. And finally, youth getting involved in corporate governance, in company policies, I think really important. Transparency, access for researchers has always been a really crucial part of understanding what's happening in social media platforms. I think youth should expect to be involved and to be included in the way companies design their products.
Laura?
I would like to comment what the sir said, because I think it's very valid and I agree, but we have to look at the situation too by the view of someone in the development country, because it's very easy when you live in somewhere that is mostly safe. Say, you can take your kid to a park, but when you live in somewhere there's dangers, you can't take your kid to the park when you want. When you don't have a lot of people who could help you raise your kid, when you're a single mother, it's hard for you to take a shower, to do basic things. So it's common that people in situations of vulnerability use more those tools to help raise those children. I read an article once that compared with a nanny or a pacifier the use of screens, and it's what's happening, but we have to come back to the multi-stakeholder and think that the government must provide safety so I could take my children to the park. So the enterprises have to help me to control this time of screen. We have to work together if we want to think about the future of children worldwidely.
Yeah, Martin?
Yeah, sure. I think I will be maybe in the interest of time deep diving on the second question on the prioritization, this moderation, freedom of speech really point. I think it's right that I mean we could do a whole session on that one. It's a really interesting what to remove and what to leave up. It's something we face every day in the millions of cases where we have to decide where should the exact border go for a piece of content. Of course, the easier one are like threats to other people or porn or terrorism. It can be difficult to find it, but when we find it, it's easy to decide on. They just have to go. The more difficult ones are the political statements, the misinformation, the tough talk. Because what is just sort of, when is it too tough talk? All those decisions and all those hitting the right balance there and then enforcing on it is super difficult, no matter who owns the platforms. It's a very difficult and tricky task. It's true, I think, as has been said by a couple of people, that we have been better at it, I think, over the years and been taking down a lot of the sort of, when we saw the algorithm reinforcing some things in a bad way, we've been trying to set a stop to that. But it is difficult because, again, it comes down to that individual decision on what are you allowed to sort of say and when should I stop you from saying that. And that is a big responsibility for us to have as yeah, and it's a daily struggle for everyone who has that kind of platform, and which is of course something we'll have to learn. But let's have a session on that next year. I think it's a super interesting one that actually. And one final point maybe is that I think maybe us in the room here, we would agree on, let's say, 98% of what should be put on the internet or put on social media, but not on 100%. We will never be, not even two of us will be in agreement on 100% of what should be left up on our platforms, for instance. So that means that there will always be disagreement about where should those exact balances be, what should be allowed and what should not be allowed. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so thank you all for your closing remark on strengthening safety and security on social media while also supporting the positive use of this platform by young people. And also, of course, thank you to my co-moderator, Lynn, for these sessions. So I would like to take this chance here to close the session by announcing that the message from the youth will be an official output of this summit and among the IGF 2025 outputs. Thank you very much for joining us.